This week's start over. Hey, tune in this week. Welcome to part 2 with our special guest star,
Bart Mixon.
Bart Mixon is who?
He is a makeup effects artist.
If you haven't watched part 1, actually go back and watch it because it flows very well.
Yeah, the first part is very fascinating.
And it's almost as fascinating as part 2, where we're going to talk about Marvel. You kids like comic books?
Yeah, I do,
say yes?
obviously. I'm assuming they said yes.
I don't know. I didn't hear them. The camera doesn't talk back.
If you're listening to us and you don't like comic books, why are you listening to us?
I don't really read comic books, and I do the show with you.
Maybe you should think about leaving.
Where's James? This is week 2, and we still don't see James.
The ointment is just now kicking in.
The ointment?
Ointment.
Sir, do you remember that scene in Planet Terror of Quentin Tarantino?
Oh, my God.
Certain things with his genitalia?
Yeah.
I don't think ointment's going to put that back on, James. Maybe some crazy glue.
Correction, that wasn't Quentin Tarantino. Although that was Quentin Tarantino.
That was Tarantino's junk who's melting off in Planet Terror. Here's Bart Mixon.
Enjoy the show. Let's talk about your work on Hellboy 1 and 2. I gotta ask you about Hellboy 1 and 2.
Yeah, we're Del Toro fans, so we gotta hear a little bit about it.
Plus, if I'm not mistaken, was this your first comic book movie? Was Hellboy? Am I mistaken?
I'm trying to think where that. Well, if you count Men in Black.
Oh yeah. Well, okay, I forgot about Men in Black. Yeah.
I had worked on the first Men in Black. I had my own shop from '94 to '98, and Rick subcontracted a couple of characters. The father and son. Vern Troyer wore the son alien, and Debbie Carrington from Total Recall, the little blonde prostitute with the machine gun. She was the father. And they ended up on the back of the video box. You know, it's like they're hardly in the movie; they're just in the background, but they were all over the merchandising. And I tried to get the Roger Corman Fantastic Four, but I didn't end up getting that job. But so I guess probably then Hellboy would have been the first. And I hardly even counted Men in Black because I'm in the Malibu.
Yeah. Because you're a huge comic book person, right?
That's what all this is.
Before we get into Hellboy, I gotta ask, favorite comic book hero?
Well, that would be Jack Kirby because he created all of my favorite characters.
Yes.
I'm a Marvel guy. I grew up in the '60s. Spider-Man 6 was the first comic book that I bought, and I got a couple of DCs, but I could quickly, tell the difference between what Ditko and Kirby were doing at Marvel versus what was going on over at DC. So even when Ditko left Marvel and went to DC to do the Creeper and Hawk and the Dove, I was like, nope, it's DC. I can't get it. But then when Kirby quit in '70 and went to do the New Gods at DC, then I obviously had to follow Kirby. So, the Fantastic Four, I think when Kirby did it, it was the world's greatest comic magazine. And that run that he and Stan Lee did, those 100 issues or 102 issues, they've yet to be topped. So that's my all-time favorite comic. So even getting to work on say what you will about the Michael Chiklis movies, they're certainly better than the one that they did in 2015.
Without question.
Yeah.
Yes.
And hopefully, if this Fox Disney thing goes through, hopefully Marvel will finally get a real Fantastic Four movie.
I think, honestly, with this merger that's happening, movie fans, that's the one thing that we're hoping comes out of this whole thing is just give us a good Fantastic Four movie.
I agree. X-Men, I don't mind it being, if I had, I'd be happy if just the Fantastic Four and all those characters came back.
Yeah.
Fox there's been some hit and misses with X-Men, but for the most part, they've done a pretty good job with, most of the X-Men stuff. The Fantastic Four just needs and deserves a better treatment than it's gotten. And it won't be till Kevin Feige gets his hands on it, which Kevin was when we did the first Fantastic Four, he was Avi Arاد's assistant. So he was like the guy who you could sit there and talk comic books with on set.
Uh-huh.
And so thankfully he remembers me from that. So like anytime, like I just saw him on Captain Marvel, and he's like, "Look at this, we got scrolls. How great is that?" So like we'll geek out for 2 or 3 minutes, and he goes back to being a multi-million-dollar executive, and I'm just the day check and makeup guy. But even like when we did the Watcher stuff for Guardians 2, he was the same thing. He's like, "Look at this, we got Stan Lee and Watchers. Who would have thought?" So we were all like, "Yay!" And but I will give you my quick Feige Fantastic Four story. So on the first Fantastic Four, again, I'm chatting with Kevin, and everybody's kind of all excited because Stan Lee's going to be coming to do his cameo. So I'm like, "Oh, what's Stan's cameo going to be in this one?" And Kevin's like, "I don't know. We got to think of something good." And I'm like, "Well, he should be Willie Lumpkin, And he's like, "That's a great idea." So like about a day or two later, there's new script pages with the character Willie Lumpkin has been added.
Yeah.
The doorman, they took lines away from the doorman, so he probably didn't appreciate it. But the stuff about "Here's your mail, Dr. Richards, glad to have you back," or whatever, that was originally just the Baxter Building doorman was going to be saying that, but they gave that to Stan. So I can take credit for his Willie Lumpkin cameo. The other thing I was pissed off at Stan about, he refused to, he has the sunglasses with the graduated they had Willie Lumpkin, the round glasses. And they were like, "Here, Stan, why don't you wear these?" He's like, "Oh no, I got to wear my trademark glasses." It's like, "No, you don't, Stan."
We'll all know it's you. We will know it's Stan Lee.
Yeah. So at least like in Guardians, the first Guardians where he had those wacky glasses, at least they finally got him off of him. But yeah, that was the one thing. It was weird that he wasn't comfortable not wearing those, But anyway.
No, it's great.
I will say I got to take some umbrage with a comment you made previously about Steve Ditko's Creeper. The Creeper's one of my favorite comic book characters.
I love Ditko stuff. It's just as the 10-year-old or 8-year-old kid, whatever I was when that came out, that wasn't enough of a lure to get me over to DC, even to buy his books. Even like the Blue Beetle, I'd be like, while he was still doing Spider-Man, he was doing Blue Beetle at Charlton, and we got one or two of them, but we never made an effort to collect, and the same thing, it wasn't until Kirby, but once Kirby went to DC, then I was like, "Oh, Joe Kubert Tarzan, Bernie Wrightson Swamp Thing." And so then I kind of opened up my world a little bit, but I'm still a Kirby guy. I've got all my Kirby omnibuses over there, and I got to meet Kirby once or twice before he died, so that was cool. In fact, my brother worked on the Albert Pune Captain America movie.
Yeah.
The 94 or whenever, the awful one. But he made sure he made sure that Kirby and Roz were invited to the cast and crew screening. So my brother and I and Kirby and Mrs. Kirby are all sitting there watching it. And like Kirby's sitting there through the whole movie going like, "Put the uniform on," just under his breath. He was all, because he's basically just Captain America, like right at the beginning and right at the end.
Oh yeah.
He's in uniform very little, but Kirby just sat there the whole time. Anytime Steve Rogers was on, he was just like, "Put the uniform on."
And he had no problems with what they did to the Red Skull.
He had less. I just specifically remember that. I didn't ask him about the Red Skull. If any of you have seen a picture of Kirby with the Captain America shield, that's my brother. My brother took that shield over. That was the shield from the movie, and he took that over to Kirby's house and for the photos. And then that shield is now in the Mixon Memories Museum.
That's amazing. Jack Kirby. James here is the big Marvel fan. I'm the big DC fan. But Jack Kirby, he appealed to me most because of his. My favorite comic book character of all time is a combination of either Green Lantern or Green Arrow, and I own his entire run of when he did the Green Arrow.
Right.
So I just love Jack Kirby's run of the Green Arrow.
Yeah, even that one, I guess when he took over the Green Arrow strip in the 50s, like the editors were just like, "Well, just go, let's see what your Green Arrow would look like." So they just wanted him to draw like a picture of the Green Arrow, and then Kirby came back with a 10-page story. There you go. So all the science fiction-y stuff, because I guess Green Arrow was more kind of just like a Batman knockoff.
And sadly, that's what he is now in television.
Right. But anyway, Kirby's Challengers of the Unknown. I mean,
you can't beat that.
Yeah, and it's clearly, I mean, I'm just glad Marvel's finally giving him, I guess, since all the legal business has been settled, they can now admit that Kirby, you know, had a lot to do with, you know, creating
Right.
all these
Yeah,
characters. And
that's one thing I'm glad with the emergence of comic book movies is people like Jack Kirby and Bill Finger are finally getting credit.
yeah, yeah. In fact, I love my favorite part of the Justice League movie was the Jack Kirby in the end crawl, which I don't know why, you know, it's got like Wonder Woman and Superman created by, and then there's this huge gap, and then Kirby gets like a single line, like essentially a single card credit, and then there's another huge gap before, like, you know, Batman and whatever. So his new God stuff is like really just, you know, just out there by itself, which I thought was great that they singled him out that much. It is going to be a little frustrating that by the time Darkseid comes to the screen, that, you know, Thanos is a Darkseid knockoff,
Exactly.
and, you know, and everybody, you know, we've been seeing Thanos now for the last, you know, whatever, 8 years with all the Avengers and Guardians and stuff. So by the time Darkseid shows up, your uneducated moviegoer is just going to assume that he's a ripoff of Thanos, much like people thought the Incredibles or the Fantastic Four was a knockoff of the Incredibles, you know, when
Right.
that came out, you know. So yeah, it's going to be a little frustrating. And then it's like DC has beaten Marvel to the punch with Aquaman, whereas Submariner came out a year or two before, you know, Aquaman did. So it's just weird that they can't get these things out in the right order. But I would love to do a Darkseid makeup. Hopefully, if and when they get to Darkseid, that they'll do him as a makeup and not a big CGI thing.
Oh, you know, that's one of the hopes.
Thanos, the first Avengers, Thanos was a makeup. That after credit scene where he turned around and smiled about, you know, courting death or whatever.
Yeah.
That was a guy in a makeup. A couple of friends of mine applied that, and then why they didn't stick with makeup, I have no idea. I mean, I thought he looked great in the new one. I mean, you can't argue that. But it's also they spent millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Right.
It's just interesting. I mean, like I've worked on Guardians and like I do the Vision for Civil War and Infinity War,
Right.
and Nebula and the Vision aren't that different visually, you know, characters. I mean, they're both kind of robotic and they've got geometric lines and whatnot on them. But Nebula is all makeup, and the Vision is a fairly heavy makeup, but with a lot of CGI on top of it. And it's just I'm not real sure what since they, you know, they were both designed on movies prior to my being involved. I don't know the thought process that led them to like, let's do this one completely as a makeup and let's do this one as a makeup with a heavy dose of digital on top of it. Because, you know, we put a cowl on Paul Bettany and a bald cap and paint him red, and I put a bunch of tracking dots on there, and then, you know, the CGI guys do all the like the eye treatment and all the lines and stuff, you know, and dimension in the face. So it's just interesting. I don't know if it's just the aesthetic choices of the different directors. I think James Gunn is more of a
Right.
makeup effects guy, you know, and like with Slither and all that stuff, I think he just likes the rubber. Everybody has prosthetics on in the Guardians movie, you know, and then you know, again, I'm not sure what led to the, you know, to the choices, but when I inherited the Vision on Civil War, it was pretty much like, all right, this is the way we're doing. So I was like, okay, somebody's got to paint him red. It might as well be me. So you know, but Paul Bettany's great, Elizabeth Olsen's great, you know, Chris Evans cool. I made him up in the second Fantastic Four, so you know he's a nice guy. They're all, it's as a fan, and you know, woohoo.
Well, we'll put off Del Toro for a few minutes because we're getting some fascinating things here, because it's great. Or I'm trying to think of the way to put it. I'm sitting here listening to you. You followed these things as a child, and now you're actually on the set. And you're not on the set of the Corman film, which we've had the director, by the way, on the show, Mick Strawn, the production designer. We've had them on the show. He's a good friend of the show. And I'm not knocking those, but you're on the Marvel films, and they don't suck. And they're finally spending the money. And this is finally pop culture. These are A movies.
Right.
You're living the dream every time you walk on one of those sets, I would imagine.
Indeed. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I've got a closet full of Marvel t-shirts. I probably own about between 150 and 200. I've got about maybe over a dozen Pennywise, but I've got just a boatload of Marvel shirts. Like when I did Guardians 2, I packed a suitcase and shipped it there with like 45 shirts in it so that I I wouldn't have to duplicate. I could just wear a different shirt every day. And
Really?
I made sure it was only characters that Marvel had the rights to. So there's a thought process here. But no, yeah, yeah, fans' dream come true. It's finally the technology has caught up with the
Right.
imagination of guys like Kirby and Ditko and those guys, and if they're willing to spend the money, then you get the results. I mean, that was one of the frustrating things with the two Michael Chiklis Fantastic Four movies. Like the first one started with an $80 million budget and it ballooned to about 100 million. But it's like you've got four superpowered heroes plus a superpowered villain, but you don't have the money to realize them, put them to
Right.
display their powers on screen. We were doing reshoots on the first one, and I was like, hey, like this shot where Mr. Fantastic is walking around his desk to pick up a notebook. Why doesn't he just stretch and pick it up? Oh, because we can't afford that. And then the first Iron Man comes out, and that's like $150 million movie. So you got basically one guy, you got twice the budget and only one character. So it's like, well, no wonder it's a big surprise that Iron Man turned out so good. I mean, it was a great actor and
Right.
everything was just right. But if they had tried to make Iron Man for half the budget, I don't think it would have been the same movie.
No.
Or I think a better example is even the recent Inhumans fiasco, where that was basically, it was 8 or 10 1-hour movies. So basically and I think they spent maybe $100 million for the whole thing. So right off the bat, Guardians of the Galaxy was a 2-hour movie and they spent $200 million. So, imagine how good Guardians would have been on a $20 million budget. If you figure like the first 2-hour Inhumans movie, they probably spent, whatever fraction of that $100 million budget. It was probably roughly $20 million. So, Guardians would have sucked.
Yeah.
Right.
Drax wouldn't be the cool makeup he is, Gamora. So, I mean, you do need a certain amount of money to bring this stuff to the screen. And as long as that's why I always hated it when they said like, oh, some stuff doesn't translate. And it's like, well, no, that's just because you don't spend the money to do it right. I think all this Marvel stuff lately, I mean, you had a Celestial in the first Guardians. So here you got this big space giant, blowing up a planet. It's like, that's the kind of thing that years ago people say Galactus won't work on screen. Of course he will. If you get the right people and put the right money in it, it's going to be great. I mean, if you compare the Spider-Man suit in the Raimi Spider-Man to the TV 1970s Spider-Man, I mean, It's the same design, but one of them looks a lot better, and that's because they spent $1 million versus $100. And it's just you got to have the right people, but you got to have the right budgets and the right attitude. And I think that's where Marvel is succeeding with Feige, is that you've got a fan steering the ship and laying, at least in broad strokes, planning where it's going. Like say the Fantastic Four movies, the guys at Fox didn't really care, and especially with the 2015 Fantastic Four, you can tell they really didn't care about making a good movie or not. They just want to keep the rights tied up. So again, so I'm hoping the Fantastic Four finally comes back to Marvel, so we'll get a good one. But it's just, if you got people, you got a decent budget, you got people that give a shit.
Yeah.
And whoa, big surprise, you got a good movie. And that's why all the Marvel movies together, they've made like $6 billion or more. I mean, it's, those 20 films, I forget what the tally was, but it's, so I mean, the stuff, it does work. It's just, you got to have some faith in it. You got to have the right people, and, so I'm glad to be a part of it, even whatever small way I am. So,
yeah. And back on the Warner Brothers. Yeah. Way to go. Justice League, turning it into Lord of the Rings. Thank you so much for that.
I don't know why they just don't, they need a Kevin Feige, and I don't know if they can find that, or not. So we'll see. I mean, as long as I have high hopes for the new Gods movie. I'm a little worried that it's the director of A Wrinkle in Time. That doesn't instill me with any confidence, but hopefully just the material and just the concepts and stuff are strong enough that it's like when Kirby had a bad inker at Marvel, you still just his storytelling and his artwork could still shine through.
Yeah.
He could survive a Vince Coletta, or a Paul Reinman. So
Right.
hopefully, the new God stuff won't get wrecked. But fingers crossed. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So back to Del Toro working on Hellboy 1 and Hellboy 2.
All right.
Did you get to spend a lot of time with him? What did you do on the 2 Hellboy films?
Well, yeah, let's see. The first, I was working at Rick Baker's. The first Hellboy was done out of Cinovation, Rick Baker's shop. Going back, I think when we were doing The Grinch, which was '99, that was the first time Del Toro came in for a meeting with Hellboy or about Hellboy. And there's a story, I don't think they had Ron Perlman in mind for that yet, but Matt Rose, who designed the makeup, he just went down into the archives at Rick's, and him and Chad Waters, they co-built all the stuff, and they just were like, who can we sculpt this on? They wanted to do like a clay sketch, and they just picked Ron Perlman's head cast. They're like, oh, Perlman would be great. So even back in '99, I don't know if that helped give Guillermo the idea. I mean, I know Guillermo and Mignola tell a story about them both having a meeting, just going like, Perlman,
Yeah.
So I just thought it was interesting that all 3 of these guys, totally separate from each other, were all thinking Perlman. But again, that was '99. We had a few meetings. It went away. I went on and was working on other stuff. I think I was doing Cat in the Hat for Steve Johnson when Hellboy finally started. And again, Matt and Chad were building. They built Hellboy over at Rick Baker's. Spectral Motion did Abe and a lot of the other characters, and then DDT in Spain did the Kronos, or not Kronos. The guy with the mask. What the hell was his name? You know who I mean?
Yeah. The Nazi. What is his name?
It's
like Kronos, but it's not. Yeah, Kronos is Del Toro's first film with Ron Perlman in it. So yeah.
But anyway, so they did most of the pre-production while I was on Cat in the Hat. At some point, I had issues with the producer on the Cat in the Hat. He was screwing me out of some SAG days. I was doing some puppeteering that I was supposed to be. We had agreed that I would be, on a SAG contract for those days, and then he reneged on that. So when Matt called up around Christmas time and said, "Hey, want you to do the stunt double makeup on Hellboy and help finish up in the shop," they were getting ready to ship everything off the location. So I quit Cat in the Hat, and the first of the year I went over and helped them, finish up building Hellboy and getting everything ready to ship to Prague. We did the first one in Prague, the second one in Budapest. So I did the on Hellboy 1, I did the photo double or stunt double Hellboy. We went through 3 different actors. We had to actually make the guy up to look like Ron Perlman first. We had a 2-piece prosthetic to get his dimensions to match Ron's, and then the that way the Hellboy pieces would then fit on top of him. Ron's got a very specific profile. He's very, for lack of a better word, is very simian.
Yes.
He was probably the only caveman in Quest for Fire that
did need the makeup.
Yeah, although he did have some prosthetics. But but by doing it that way, every piece we shipped like 200 sets of prosthetics to Prague, for 100 for Ron and 100 for the stunt double. Had we not done it this way, had the stunt doubles makeups been custom pieces, then they would have taken a whole new set of molds and all this stuff. By everything being a Ron Perlman pieces, every foam run the foam department did was potentially a hero piece. And if it wasn't good enough for a hero piece, then I would get it for the stunt double. And there was more than one occasion when Matt Rose and Jake Garber, who were applying Ron Perlman's makeup, they'd be like sticking a piece on. They go like, "Oh, I don't like the looks of this neck. Hey, let me see your neck, Bart. Oh, okay, this looks better." So they were like trade pieces. So had they not all been out of the same molds, they wouldn't have been able to do that. But I did the double about probably 70 or 80 times. Again, it was the exact same makeup that Ron Perlman wore, with the addition of these 2 extra pieces that bulked out the performers face, to Perlman's proportions. We also did the same trick on the Fantastic Four and on X-Men 3 for the stunt doubles for the Beast and the Thing. But I was a Mike Mignola fan from way back, since like Cosmic Odyssey, which was a DC book, and
quit trying to butter me up.
I guess I remember being familiar with who Mike was when John Byrne was doing the Hulk and Mignola was doing the Hulk, or no, Mignola was doing the Hulk and Byrne was doing Alpha Flight, and then they had a crossover story, and at the end of the story they switched creative teams. So Byrne got the Hulk and Mignola got Alpha Flight. So I kept buying Alpha Flight, and I was going like, oh, this Mignola guy is pretty good. And then he did like a Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom crossover that was pretty cool. And he did Gotham by Gaslight, with the Batman thing. And then he did the Cosmic Odyssey, which was Kirby characters. So, what's not to like there. So by the time Hellboy came along in '94, I was already a Mignola fan. So that was an automatic, buy for me. So I collected, I was a fan anyway. So when I got to work on the movie, and then ultimately I got to meet Mike on set, I was wearing an Avengers t-shirt that he had drawn. So I remember him sticking his head in the trailer and going like, hey, I drew that. I was like, I know you did. That's why I'm wearing it. And we've been friends ever since. He actually gave me his phone number. He's had me over to his house. He still talks to me, so so
you're going to text that to us in a second, right? So we can have him on the show.
And I'm very jealous of your t-shirt collection. I must admit.
You do have one hell of a t-shirt collection, sir.
I've got way too many. I need to start. I know I was wearing one the other day. I was doing something that I wanted a shirt that I didn't mind if I got some paint on it, whatever. And I realized that I'd worn it on a show I did in Mexico in 1998. So it's like, and I still have it. I'm like, geez, it's okay to throw a few of these away, but it's, yes, as you can tell, like if you look at my Instagrams, it's like, suddenly, I hadn't posted anything in months, and then bam, now I've posted like 200 things in the last week or whatever.
Yeah.
So I tend to overdo stuff. I'll like the t-shirts or whatever, then I'll kind of, run out of steam. But anyway, but they're mostly Kirby. I'm selective. It's not like I'm just buying anything. It's character, but it's more about the artist. But I got some good Don Hex lately, like a nice Ant-Man and the Wasp, and we're doing Captain Marvel, and they were doing reshoots for Ant-Man on the stage next to us. So I was, being sure to wear Ant-Man shirts, while I knew they were and that kind of stuff. So still have fun with it. I'm still a fan, and all that sort of thing.
So you're going to go ahead and give us some spoilers for Captain Marvel, right? This is going to be a Bonehead exclusive.
No, I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
I had to bring it up. I had to say it. We talked about it before the show. I just wanted to make a joke about
it. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure it's safe to assume that both with Ant-Man and the Wasp and stuff is going to be introduced there that's going to pay off in Avengers 4. Again, that's just the fan in me. I'm just assuming.
I think Disney got a hold of our feed because you just went buffered right when you started talking.
Yeah, you did. So, there's seriously a mouse there, a literal mouse, a Mickey Mouse.
I am near Disney, but I don't think you'll be disappointed. Pretty much probably. Well, it's like I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, "Oh, like I mentioned Skrulls," and they're like, "What? You can say Skrulls are in it?" It's like, well, they've said Skrulls are in it, so
Yeah.
So you got Skrulls, you got Kree, you got Captain Marvel. It looks. I saw some of the animatics for some of the scenes. It looks cool. It looks like it's got like a nice sense of humor. It's not. I don't think it's going to be Ragnarok funny, but
right.
But it's going to be. Maybe not even quite Ant-Man, but it's got it's got like its own kind of style of humor in it. So it looks very promising. I'm can't wait. It's only 8 months away. It'll be here before you know it.
I know.
Rob Zombie.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So Joe read my mind. So we've talked about comic books for a good piece. Let's go back to horror because the people in this room, we're actually going to do an episode on this man. Alone, eventually. You're a frequent collaborator with Rob Zombie.
Yeah, or more accurately, Wayne Toth, who is buddies with Rob and has been doing all of his makeup effects and a lot of his stage show stuff since, I guess, House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even before that. So I did a little bit of work on. So I come at the Rob Zombie stuff by way of Wayne.
Uh-huh.
I don't honestly don't remember how I met Wayne, how I know him, but we get along great. We're good pals. He brought me in on House of a Thousand Corpses. I mainly did the Tiny character, the big burn guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think I seem to recall the Bill Moseley's got like a skull face thing. I think I might have done that the first time it worked. I think he was just like, here, go paint a skull on him.
Uh-huh.
I don't know where I was when he did the first Halloween. I came back for Halloween 2.
Right.
That was a lot of fun. We did that in Atlanta. That was my second Pet Cemetery, and then Halloween 2. Pet Cemetery 2, and then Halloween 2 was my second Atlanta outing. It was I got to know Rob better on that one. I was kind of on the inner circle. Our trailer kind of became the place where he would come to get away from all the bullshit. If he needed someplace just to come sit down and vent or just
Right.
hop, for a while. That was more than likely the place where it would be. A couple of times, we'd go see movies, on the weekend and stuff. We hung out with Tyler Maine as well. That was cool, playing video games and whatever. It was a fun show. Wayne was mainly, I would help him where I could with the Michael Myers stuff, but there's a lot of just victims and whatnot. And there were frequently, Wayne would be on set, so he'd say like, go back and kill so and so, so he would just. So, sometimes it was a pre-designed specific thing. Other times he was just like, just make something, make something up. I forget, man, I'm blanking on her name. Who's the, Octavia Spencer was in it. And she gets, we had a prosthetic where she had like a cut on her nose that's bleeding. And then Rob wanted to kill her on camera. So she gets stabbed a bunch of times and she ends up like with a knife in her head. But she's also got some wounds on her face. She plays like a nurse in the hospital where the girl's at. But like all the other facial stuff, Wayne was like, go back and start on her, and then I'll come back as soon as I can and help you finish her. And by the time he got back to the trailer, he's like, oh, I see you're done. And I'd put, whatever, I just pulled stuff out of our stock and just, stuck on it. So there was a lot of, opportunities to just kind of wing it. And, literally, pulling stuff out of our ass. So,
right.
And doing some fun stuff. There was that Danielle Harris when she gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We had like a big cut on her side. And that was the one time, I don't know what Rob was expecting, but that was the one time he actually kind of flinched when he came in and we had her all done. And he's like, damn, we're like, what, too much? He goes, no, it's, because I wasn't expecting anything quite that extreme, but he goes, well, that'll be fine. So literally he was kind of like, taken aback a little. And as you know, Rob's got tattoos all over the place. And I don't think it was on Halloween 2. It was probably on 31. I was talking with him. And I noticed on one of his wrists, he's got the Jack Kirby thing tattooed on there. So it's like, it's the thing, it's the Jack Kirby thing. So that right there, I thought he was a cool guy anyway, but that right there kind of upped him in my, like, you got the right one, But I did, what was his album? Was it Hellbilly Deluxe?
Hellbilly Deluxe, yeah.
Where they're all beaten up. So Wayne and I did those makeups. So that was, so I got a credit on the Rob Zombie album, which I never thought I would do.
Yeah.
Right.
I did 31 with Wayne, and that was I on the whole time? I think I was only supposed to be on a couple of weeks for that one, but I think some scheduling stuff opened up to where I could come back and do more of that. And that was with the clown guys and the clown makeups. And again, there were days when we were just, winging it, where he would Wayne and I get along well enough that, he's not afraid to like, here, put something on this guy, and he would be happy with it. I almost did Lords of Salem, but that went from being a huge makeup show to, I think, only one day of makeup effects. And so he just, every time he would call, and because I was doing Men in Black 3 at the time, so he'd be calling me like in New York, and he's like, oh, I need you for 4 weeks on this. And then it's like, oh, I need you for 2 weeks oh, it's only 1 week. Oh, we don't have any, we don't have any budget. In fact, have you guys seen Lords of Salem?
We
Yes,
have.
yes.
James and I were the two people that saw it in the theater.
Well, I'm the third one, but the little demon that's in there, Wayne had built the head for that, and he hadn't done the body yet. And he was saying like, yeah, this is Vern Troyer's stunt double. Is wearing this going to be wearing the makeup. And I was like, well, I happen to have the molds for Vern Troyer's Men in Black alien body. So he's like, oh, can I borrow? I go, and it's kind of babyish, and it was supposed to be like a little underdeveloped baby. So I let Wayne borrow the molds, and he took a pull of like the body and tore the stomach open or whatever and made it gross. But the basic body on that is our Men in Black one little alien that we did for Vern Troyer. So there's a little bit of trivia for you.
Wow.
But and then I just worked on was it Three from Hell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was on for a couple of days, just helping out with some blood stuff. And again, it was more of that was like really low budget, and so Wayne couldn't afford like on 31. He's like, yeah, he goes, I won't insult you by. They have things called I'm in the makeup union,
Right.
so they have like certain rates that you're supposed to work for. And then they have what they call like tier 1 productions, which are like super low budget, where they can legally they can pay you less than what they're supposed to. And he goes, I won't insult you by offering you this tier 1 rate, but he's like, how little will you work for? So we kind of met in the middle, But on 31, they wouldn't even play ball with him like that. So I just went in for a day or two. I think I was doing a Jennifer Garner movie called Peppermint that'll be out later this year, and something there was enough of a hole in my schedule where I could go in for a day or two and just help him with some blood stuff. So I can't even. I think there's a sequence in a women's prison where some people get beat up or cut up. So we had some stuff on this one, like big dykish, prison girl, prison lady. So anyway, but it was nice to see Rob again. Bill Moseley was there, so it was fun to catch up. But what Wayne is, I've got a small circle of friends that kind of like when Rob Bottin called me for RoboCop, and I was like, I don't care what it is, I'm there. Wayne's one of those guys that if it can work out, then I'll pretty much jump at any chance to work with him. Same thing like when I did Bad Grandpa with Steve Prouty. I'd done a couple of other shows with him prior to that. So when he called up and just said, he goes, hey, it's me, it's Will Huff, and it's Johnny Knoxville. And I'm like, I'm there. It's like, that's all I need to hear. There's at this point in my career, it's almost more about, who I'm working with and if it's a fun.
The relationships. Yeah. The experience.
And it's, that was the cool thing. Men in Black 3, going on 40 years, and that was his last big show, and then I was getting to apply Boris the Animal, so it's like it's nice to kind of go out to be a part of Rick's swan song, what became pretty much, he did Maleficent after that, but getting to do the main character, and it's a Rick Baker movie, and it's Rick Baker makeup, so again, just the fan in me was like, yay, so yeah, but it seems like lately these days it's more like who. Yeah, am I working with my buddies? I got friends that do American Horror Stories, so anytime I can, over and help them, or the guys I've been working with on the Marvel stuff, mostly the legacy people, they're real cool. So if I can, try and just drop anything. So it's but it's more about working with your pals and doing. Thankfully, it's still cool stuff, So I get to do both, work with my friends and work on a cool movie.
I've got to ask one fan question, speaking of which, and maybe this is also working with people that you've worked with before, but you've worked on Star Trek in the films and recently on Star Trek Discovery. How did that come about? Because I'm a huge Star Trek fan, so I have to ask.
Well, again, it's just working for your pals.
Okay.
I've day checked. I've been in the makeup union since '94, so I've worked on like Star Trek, DS9, Voyager. I think I did a little bit of Enterprise. I worked on the last 3, I think, or next generation cast movies. But then when the two J.J. Abrams movies were done, friends of mine were heading that up. So, and we're shooting in town, so they had these big cattle call days where they needed just a bunch of people. But similarly on Discovery, they were shooting that in Toronto, but there was enough other stuff going on that the other shows in Toronto had depleted the makeup roster. So this friend of mine, James McKinnon, who was heading it up, he was able to bring people in from LA. And so I was one of the ones that he called. He brought in maybe half a dozen or more. But he had like Mikash and Aaron Kruger from Horror Story and Mike Smithson and Bruce Fuller. He had a lot of big, but he had also, because James had been in Atlanta with us on Guardians 2, so he was pulling people from Atlanta as well as LA. But yeah, it was just, again, it's just friends calling friends. James and I worked together on Dollhouse back in whenever the hell that was. Mm-hmm. And I think we'd even had our paths had crossed a little bit prior to that. So it's just, like John Blake, who brings me in to do the Vision. I first met him on Nightmare on Elm Street 2, working for Mark Shostrom. He was on our team for that. So, thankfully some of these friendships and relationships last, and you may not work for them, it may be a span of decades sometimes, unfortunately, but like when Blake got Civil War, he's like, I know Bart's a comic book guy, so he's, who else am I going to call to do the Vision? Or when Spectral Motion, I'd met Mike Elizalde on the first Hellboy, and then so when he got the Fantastic Four, he's like, well, Bart, he's the guy to call. So so at least I'm in some people's minds in terms of like, I'm the comic book guy and I'm a makeup guy. So when we got a a movie with makeup, let's get them together.
So another important question is, so when you're doing the Marvel movies, your choice of apparel is obvious, but what happens when you do Peppermint with Jennifer Garner? What the hell shirt do you wear for that?
I'll still do either the Marvel stuff, or sometimes lately I've been switching over to the Pennywise, because I've got at least a good dozen. In fact, I got one coming in the mail. I think it's from it's the acid burn, but it's got like the werewolf and the Al Marsh and the mummy and a couple other characters. So I was like, ooh, cool.
They should give these to you for free. Do you tell them who you are?
They should. A couple of times I did order. I think when I ordered my Ernest Scared Stupid, and I think they had a Pennywise. And I just, paid for them, ordered them, and then they like returned the money. They were like, oh, it's you, and so they gave them to me for free. And a couple of times they have. I mean, usually, whoever you're buying them from is the artist, so, it's easy for anybody to say like, hey, I made that,
Yeah.
Right. I have two questions, and these are my final two. One is, what is a dream project that you would love to work on? Let's go with that first.
Well, if Marvel, if they get the Fantastic Four back, I would love to be, I'd love to be like, not necessarily doing the makeup on it. I wish they would just put me in a room with all this Jack Kirby reference and say, just find cool Kirby stuff to put in the, put in the movie. Makeup wise, I think probably like I'd love to do a dark side makeup. I was at a talk a few years ago where somebody's like, what comic book character would you like to do? And I couldn't think of anyone, but then right when it was over, I was like, crap, dark side. So yeah, if I could, like a really nice dark side makeup, I think would, just from a fan perspective.
Yeah.
But just as a makeup, it seems like I've done pretty much enough of all different types of makeup, just in terms of, makeup effects. So yeah, I'd say dark side. So
okay,
there you go.
The second question is something that I ask all writers or directors, usually production people. Who's the worst director you've worked with and why? What are you going to say? You don't have to answer it?
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
But I always ask. And honestly, almost everyone always answers. And they always have a great... Even if it's a director, they'll have, well, let me tell you about Joel Silver and how I hate that dick or something like that.
Yeah, I'll probably pass on that one. And maybe just because no one's leaping to mind, it's probably the old, was it Time Heals? You tend to, think of the good times more so than the bad ones. And I think I've been, pretty lucky both with the actors and the directors that I've worked with. That guys like Guillermo del Toro's a a fan,
Yeah.
so that's cool when you've got somebody, or like Kevin Feige at Marvel. But yeah, I'm sure there's you know been some, but nobody's. I've had some kind of butted heads with some directors in the past, and over some stuff, but again, nothing leaps to mind, or
Okay.
we don't have enough time to go into that,
Oh, we have all the
but
time in the world.
We have all the time in the world if you've got a good story. Yeah.
Our kids are in bed. We're good.
We're good.
no, but it's like, and again, it's maybe because I think even stuff that at the time where I'm like, oh geez, that what a pain in the ass, I can't wait for this movie to be over. Then a year later, I'm like, that was a great time. I had
Yeah.
and again, it's even something like Bright, where David Ayers has got a very his people skills may not be what they all
Are they
but
very much like his movies? Is his personality his movies?
yeah, you definitely see that coming through. But even
Yeah,
like
I can see that.
like on a show like that, or like we were shooting in like really crappy parts of LA, and it was just you know, just between like I'd leave home all like, yay, I'm gonna go apply a cool makeup today. And then after an hour in the LA traffic, I'd be like, oh, I'm ready to kill somebody. But even on something like that, like in our trailer, I had like Chris Nelson's a friend of mine that goes back to Danger Island, and Jamie Kelman I've worked with on a million shows, and Richard Redlison. So even like within the confines of, at least in our trailer, everybody was buddies, everybody got along. So all that was very positive. So even if the show had other negative aspects, like again, like we're shooting in crappy locations. I think on the way to work one night, Will Smith's hair guy, he was at a traffic light and someone pulled a gun on him, because we were like in just Skid Row, just real shit parts of LA. So there was lots of negatives going on, but at least in the trailer, it was we were all buddies and it was all good. So, and again, maybe it's a defense mechanism, where I just tend to push all the bad stuff away and just remember the good stuff. But so and again, there's probably, I'm sure once we hang up, it'll be like, oh wait a minute, that guy,
Oh, we
real
can do
jerk.
it again. Anytime you want to call up and go over it, we will stop everything we're
absolutely.
doing and do it again.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
my previous podcast guys were just texting me before this, going like, "Hey, when are we going to do another one?" So, but yeah, once this gets all cut together and see how it goes, I'm sure we could. I'm sure there's lots of stuff we haven't gotten to because I tend to drone on too much.
No, it's been great.
I do want to ask one quick final question on my part.
It better be a good one.
You mentioned earlier, obviously makeup work and things like that, but you mentioned earlier you are in the Screen Actors Guild for puppeteering.
Right.
What is the process for being recognized as puppeteering in the Screen Actors Guild? I've never had anybody tell me that story or have that credential.
Damn it, that's a good question. I can't give him crap.
Okay. I got on the first Men in Black. Rick Baker subcontracted these two alien characters to my shop, and they required a radio controlled to operate the mouth and the eyes. So my partner and I took them on set and helped perform them. We had they had like a crew of regular SAG puppeteers, guys who would do like McDonald's commercials and that kind of crap, which they're good character performers, but they're not always good creature performers because
Right.
there is a difference. But so I got SAG eligible on that show. You have to work. I think you have to get like 3 days, like these vouchers, and work 3 days. But I didn't join until we were prepping Men in Black 2, and I was working with the Worm Guy character, so I knew there was going to be a lot of work with them in the show. And when we had our oversized puppets, I wanted to do the antennas on that because I was like, well, anybody can do that, so it might as well be me. So I went and joined. And that was just a question of paying your initiation, fees. But even though I hadn't joined SAG, I was still getting residual checks off of the first Men in Black for the
Right.
puppeteering. And there's a whole formula for, it depends on how, from what the movie makes, they take a certain percentage of that and set it aside as residuals for the SAG performers. And then, if there's 2 actors in the movie, then they split it. If there's 100 actors, then it gets divvied up based on how many days, you worked on the show and all this sort of stuff. So there's a big complicated formula, but I just, I did some there was a American Horror Story Roanoke. There was a shot where they had some severed pigtails on a
Yeah.
wall.
Yeah.
And they were like, hey, we need some extra guys to puppeteer those. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so I just got a check today for that. It's like, like $100. And it's like, oh, I'll take it.
That's 4
but-
shirts.
Hey, $100 is pretty good. I saw some of those residual checks. It could be like 75 cents.
I have gotten some pretty tiny ones, but I get the 2 Men in Black 1 and 2 and Angels and Demons. I get checks off of those. I got other friends that have done a ton of SAG. There's some famous story. One of the Stan Winston guys who puppeteered like the T-Rex arms or something on the first Jurassic Park. I think his first check before taxes was like 75 grand. And
Jeez.
yeah, I've never seen anything remotely close to that. But he actually had the nerve to go in the shop and complain how much taxes they'd taken out of his check. It's like there's like 50 people here that would have killed to have made the dinosaur do that.
Yeah,
So it's like, just take your money and shut up. But anyway, so it's but that was part of the thing that kind of pissed me off on Cat in the Hat, was that I was supposed to there were a couple of gags. There's a gag where the cat's arm stretches. Ooh, that's kind of like that. And so like I was his hand, and then we had like a stretchable glove that, and I played his hand in a couple other scenes. And again, that should have been a SAG. The understanding was that would have been SAG day. And then the producer was like, I don't want to pay for that. So after the 4th time of doing that, I was like, well, I got a better job offer, so goodbye.
If it makes you feel better, no offense, I know you worked on it. That movie's terrible.
It unfortunately it is, and I think the movie we shot was better. Bo Welch,
really?
the director, he was the art director on Men in Black, and he's a real nice guy. And there's definitely when I left, the script, it was one script that we shot, and then by the time they tested it and did reshoots, what came out was noticeably different. So I remember when I went and saw the crew screening, I'm like, where'd all this crap come from? So it's hard, without just sitting there and pointing, to say what was what, but it was definitely monkeyed with in post and not to the better. So I don't think, it's not saying what we shot was going to be a classic, but I think it was certainly better.
Superior, right.
But yeah, like I used to say, I don't write them, I just work on them.
Yeah.
I think, it's always nice to work on something you're not ashamed of, and Cat in the Hat's, not so much, but whatever.
That's okay.
No, I appreciate you answering the question about puppeting, because I haven't encountered anybody with that background before, so I really wanted to know. Thank you.
Well, I hope that cleared it up a little bit. It's a weird area because it's I guess because you're performing there live, with the cast, but you would think like a stop motion animator should be entitled to residual checks. If I can get a check from doing this with a puppet, here this guy's, Ray Harryhausen's actually
right.
Yeah.
performance in that thing, but they don't get, and then on the same token, you would think like your CGI guys entitled, because they're sometimes taking next to nothing and making these. So it's a weird, gray area. And I think they're always trying to, a lot of times they do what they call a buyout, where they don't have to, they just give you a little bit better paycheck for the day, and then they don't have to give you residuals later, which kind of sucks, because if it's a big hit, then you're not going to be getting all that money. So it's one of those things where they're always trying to screw you out of what you got coming.
That studio math.
That's right. Yeah, what is it? Shows like Alien never turned a profit.
Forrest Gump, I think, is the big one that people always use as an example. I think it's all right. So, do you want to? We've kept you for 2 hours. We're so sorry we kept you so long.
Well, that's okay. I'm glad we got it worked out. I know we probably, glossed over or didn't get to a few things. But
we have a whole half a list.
Well, again, when will this be up? On your YouTube?
We don't know exactly. Hopefully, that's a good question. We'll have to get back to you and let you know. Before we go, I want to make sure that our viewers, our listeners know they can go to your museum. Where in Houston? Say it for us one more time.
Well, it's I should have the address handy. I
No,
don't.
no,
If you
but
go to
it's
my,
in Houston. What's the name of the museum?
oh, okay, if you go to my website, bartmixon.com, there's a link for the Mixon
Right.
Memories Museum. It's in South Houston, which is a suburb of Houston, which oddly enough is on the south side of Houston. Typically, it's like a nonprofit sort of thing. I think it's mainly just a place for my dad to go hang out, you know. But he's generally there every Sunday from like 2 to dark. It's a 4,000 square foot building. The back 3/4 of it I've got like the spider from it. I've got Pennywise figures, Men in Black 2, the big dead alien that was in the Men in
Right.
Black headquarters that Frank the Pug hides among all the tentacles at one point. I designed and oversaw the construction of that at Rick's, and they gave that. Rick and Sony didn't want it after the show wrapped, so I boxed it up or trucked it to Houston. So that's there. There's just Fright Night 2 stuff, Ernest Scared Stupid, Grinch, Hellboy, whatever. There's just all kinds of stuff there. So it's check it out.
We have some listeners in Houston. Curtis, one of our is a listener, so they probably will actually get some uptick in business there. So that
Curtis, go to Bart Mixon's museum.
Yeah, so they can go to bartmixon.com. They can follow you on Instagram as well, right?
Right.
All right. So is there any projects you want to talk about before we get off here that you've got coming up that you want to shout out? I know you've got the Marvel stuff.
Well, Captain Marvel will be out next March. I just did this thing called Peppermint with Jennifer Garner. It's the director of Taken.
Yeah.
It's kind of her return to the action genre.
Right.
So she was kind of excited about getting back into that. So it's kind of a blood and dirt type show. She's got a pretty good body count in that one. I forget how many people we killed in that, but a fair amount. Nothing. I mean, that Rob Zombie 3 from Hell, I was on that a little bit. Rumor is they're going to be doing a Bright 2, so I'm hoping to be on that.
Saw that.
And I'll probably remember something when you guys when we're done. But that's pretty much it. So I think Peppermint's out. I know the trailer dropped for that a couple of weeks ago, so check that out. So yeah, that's about it.
Okay, so we'll do the wrap, and then if you can stay on really quick, we'll say goodbye to you, okay? So this has been Bonehead.
Just one
What did I
thing.
miss?
One thank you.
What did I miss?
One thank you to Blake Best.
Yes.
Who, without Blake Best, we wouldn't have gotten in contact with you,
All right.
Bart. So thank you, Blake. We really appreciate the help.
Absolutely. So this is Bonehead. Follow us on YouTube, iTunes, and SoundCloud. Subscribe.
Leave comments.
Positive
ones.
Thank you so much, Bart Mixon. We are out.
Take care.
Take care. Wasn't that fun, kids? I know I had a blast.
Me too. Chuck E. Cheese, screw you.
Absolutely. James still isn't here.
Oh, no, but he did call in between the episodes, and basically all I heard was, ow, ow, it burns, make it stop, and then a big plop, and then the phone died.
It's funny, he called you, but I heard a whole thing about mommy, 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 blow on it.
I did not hear that. What do you think it meant?
I think it could mean several different things. Could he be calling for his mother? Could he be calling for someone else's mother? What did he mean by blow on it? Bart Mixon, thank you so much for coming on this episode. You're one of our favorite guests that we've ever had. You told some great stories. We really appreciate it. We'd love to have you back. He has promised that he will come back on if this doesn't suck. Right? So he didn't say it that way, but I know that that's what the MF meant. So thanks, Bart. I'm just cutting out the middleman saying I hope it didn't suck and I hope you had a good time because we love talking to you.
And again, thank you to Blake Best for all your help in getting this set up.
Absolutely.
And just remember to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and SoundCloud. Rank us, leave comments, and rate us. I don't think you can rank us.
You can rate us, you can rank us, you can do whatever you want. However, you need to subscribe. The reason we're able to get certain guests is because we meet other people like Bart, and because we knew Blake, he was able to build a relationship he already had a relationship with Bart and was able to talk to or get him to talk to us. the better ratings we have, the more subscribers, the more people are more apt to pay attention to us. So we have great guests. We want to get more great guests. If you enjoy listening to these people, specifically the behind the scenes people, you need to subscribe to us, and you need to share us with other folks and have them subscribe too. Because, like I said, one of our favorite people, Mick Strawn, called me the other day, and his first words out of his mouth is, "Why isn't Bonehead more popular?"
Yeah. So,
well, look at me, I got Dream Warrior review. No, I love Mick Strawn. But we need the help. We need you to share. We need you to subscribe. Please do so.
and on that note, we will see you again next week.
Mm-hmm. James may or may not be here. It depends if we find super glue to reattach his junk.
And he may be walking more and more like John Wayne. We'll find out.
Manly?
No.
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 He won't have any manhood.
No. Bye, everybody.
Nothing for his mommy to blow on.
Let's fix your shirt before we keep going.
Sorry. Does it look okay now?
Well, they were just lopsided. It was
Oh, do I look like I had boobs?
one.
One big boob. One big boob. I just keep playing with it, massaging it.
There's no way to talk about James when he's not here.